I think there are a lot of men, and I'm going to be a little critical, there are a lot of men that are insecure.
Yeah. You can say that all day long. We got insecurities, without a doubt.
And because of that insecurity, we fail in becoming good mentors and male role models to other males.
You're listening to the Father and Father podcast with Father John, McKenzie, and Jason A. Smith.
I thought us two could sit down and actually, put a podcast together and see what happens and see who we inspire.
Two men, being black men, being from the city of Detroit, and being Catholic in itself, you put those together, that's going to be rare.
We want to just be two brothers talking and see what happens.
All right. Welcome back to the Father
It's all right.
Welcome back to the Father and Father podcast.
Yes, we back, and we're actually doing a whole series, right? What's the series about, Jason?
Male figures in our lives.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. This is episode 2 of that, and I hope everybody got a chance to listen to the first one, but this one I think is going to be really, really deep.
Yeah, deep and also detailed.
Yeah,
right?
practical, detailed.
Exactly.
So that people can really get into the mode of knowing like what it's really like. Because some men don't know what it's like to have a male figure in their life. Like,
very true.
And it's just like
sadly true.
Yeah, we just out here like.
Yeah.
And it's like man, even people with fathers, they just think they take for granted or grandfathers.
Yeah.
They just take for granted that a guy is just there. You know.
So why don't you start us off?
So. We wanted to get into the details about how can someone find male figures or circles as an adult.
Yeah. So
we're going to talk about children in another episode, but we really broke this one down in a little bit of detail because I know that when I was, I want to say in my mid-30s, again, I didn't even know what the deal was about having male figures or male groups.
Yeah.
And we talked in the last episode about particular male figures.
Yeah.
And again, by God's grace, they were just in our lives. But having certain groups and finding places where we can actually, bond with some guys, go fishing, go to a ball game, and even attend mass together,
right.
Or different things and have some things to bounce things off of and not necessarily being afraid of being transparent. Some of those, it takes a little while for all of that to happen, but we're going to get into all of those different groups today.
Yeah, no, it does. It takes a lot. Yesterday, I just kind of jumping off of where you going, you mentioned fishing, and I was able, I know this is already dated, but took my nephew fishing, and it was his first time out on the boat fishing. Mm-hmm. He had been fishing previously with some friends, but he had never fished on a boat. And what was beautiful about that, and I was kind of reflecting too, because one of my good friends, Gerald, who's been a childhood friend, he loves fishing, goes out 2 or 3 times a week. And so we got on his boat yesterday, took my nephew, and we had a little competition. Men get together, we want to have a competition. Yeah. Who will catch the first fish, and then who's going to catch as many fish. And what was beautiful as we were out on the boat, my nephew actually cast it out, and Gerald, my friend Gerald, said, "Hey, let me Mr. Miyagi you," and so this was to my nephew. Yeah. Now, my nephew, thanks be to God, like my nephew's mom, and just also because of social media like TikTok, my nephew knows, he's 16 years old. He knows a lot about the 90s movies, music, et cetera, et cetera.
That's what's up.
Right? So I won't say what song he was singing in the car, though. I ain't going to go there. But it was a 90s song that was a big hit. Anyway, when Gerald said, "Hey, I need to Mr. Miyagi you," Gerald said, "Hey, do you even know who Mr. Miyagi was?" And he was like, my nephew was like, "Yeah, I had heard about him." And then we started talking about the Karate Kid. Okay. But my nephew had never seen the 80s Karate Kid. He saw the new Karate Kid. Uh-huh. He had never seen it, but he knew who Mr. Miyagi was. So it was just that interesting generational gap.
Right.
But, Gerald said, "Hey, come over to the front of the boat." He helped, cast it out. He immediately caught his first fish. It was kind of like a little miracle in a way. I mean, it was like immediate. As soon as he cast it out, it caught. And he picked it up, and you could just see his smile.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Now, the other thing is, Gerald had caught. I I'm kind of competitive. I'm gonna say I caught the first fish, but I didn't hook and reel. But anyway, Gerald caught the first fish, and I let my nephew. I wanted my nephew to take a photo with the fish, and you could just kind of see he wasn't really smiling. He was just holding it up. But when he caught his fish, it was like he had from cheek to cheek smiling.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was thinking about while this was all going on was like, man, here I got one of my best friends, childhood friends, doing very well for himself. I got my nephew out here who's 16, and I'm out here. And the relationships of us, right? Best friend, nephew, but I'm their pastor.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And here it is, you know, Gerald not being afraid to teach a young kid how to fish, and my nephew kind of wanting to be taught how to fish. You know, so it was just a lot of stuff happening on that fishing trip, and I just think like this is all part of it, you know.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah,
that's
man.
dope.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful testimony.
Yeah. So, the first bullet point that we got here about how to find a male figure, and I put down, I was like, you know, you gotta want to be that male figure.
Yeah.
Because wherever you start, wherever you go, whatever you do, you may be looking for somebody. You want to be reaching out, and you know, sometimes it's like you got to understand that you get in these circles, like you just described with your fishing outing, is that everybody plays their part.
Yeah.
And the youth may just accept the fact that they're engaged in it.
Yeah.
But when you get to be a mature adult, it's like, you know, you got to want to be that male figure too.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that you got to have a criteria or that you got to be without sin. It doesn't mean that you got to be perfect.
No.
It just means that, you know, like you got to really think about yourself and don't necessarily judge yourself.
Yeah.
But you got to want to be that male figure. I
think you have to want to be that male figure. I think as an adult, what do I think about this? I think a lot. I think let's just do real talk. I feel like, especially like not just in our community, but in other communities, I think there are a lot of men, and I'm going to be a little critical, there are a lot of men that are insecure.
Yeah. You can say that all day long. We got insecurities, without a doubt.
And because of that insecurity, we fail in becoming good mentors and male role models to other males. And but the only person that can take you out of your insecurity, obviously, is Jesus. But it's your free will to want to come out of that, you know. So it's true. You don't have to be perfect, but you got to have at least a willingness to grow out of your immaturity, insecurity, and then also kind of like like understand who you are within society, you know.
Right.
And just don't accept that you're just some, you know, secondhand person or whatever that doesn't have a real stake in what's going on in the world. But that you have all the stake of what's happening in the world, right? And so to grow out of that insecurity, you know, I think that's one of the main things that hinders a lot of our men to become who they are. You know, there's the old scripture saying, I'll say it in Latin because I always loved it. We used to say it in the monastery. Viriliter agiter. Viriliter agiter. So act like a man. That's what St. Paul says, right? Act like a man. But a lot of men don't know how to act like men. So we're not even going to get to that point of where they're going to be male role models and mentors if they don't know themselves what it means to be a man.
Oh, man. You know what's crazy is that it feels like what you just said, that probably should have been on the back end of everything we get ready to talk about. And I only say that because in the element of meeting people where they are, a person could be intimidated by that because there are a lot of men that actually need to take that step to act like a man. And it's unfortunate, but the truth is that there are a lot of men out here that are not acting like men. So
no, it is. It's
just
true.
That's
it's
just
true.
the honest to goodness truth.
So you're never even going to get to the point of them being role models.
Right.
But I think once a person does, like I never understood, and I'm going to be just straight up, I've never understood how a father, like a biological father, doesn't want to take care of his kids, whether it be a daughter or a son. I've never, like, there's no argument in the world that you can get me to even start to think, oh, I understand you now.
Right.
Like, no.
Yeah.
And so
it's no such thing as that.
It
doesn't even register.
It goes against nature.
Like I get not wanting to be with the mom.
But with the kids,
yeah,
I mean, come on.
I can get walking away from that relationship.
Yeah,
but not the kids. Like your seed, your offspring. Like
and it happens. Let's be frank, it happens too often, and in many communities, but in a special way in the Black community, it happens too often where the male figure has just left the scene.
Yeah,
and it's left up to, thanks be to God, strong women, but there's women. I mean, and we can have a whole episode about the beauty of being a mother and a woman and things like that. And everybody knows I'm all for that. But you need that male figure. And so many of our male figures have just abandoned ship.
Right.
So Captain has abandoned. The ship is going down. Captain has already jumped over and is in the lifeboat. That's terrible. Terrible. And shame on them.
That's actually where we got to start, because family and friends is really where the first place you look.
Exactly.
Like that's the first place men look for male figures. Like cousins, uncles, the guys that you grew up with, went to school with. Yeah. That's really the first place that you look, because that's the shallow point where you can see. Precisely. You may ask mom or auntie, like, where is such and such? Ironically, I have a cousin that right now is incarcerated. Okay. And we would always talk. And when we were young adults, he was like, he always wondered why his mom didn't bring him around me and our family. Yeah. And he was frustrated about that. Like why didn't we do X, Y, and Z? And because he knew what we had going on in our lives. Yeah. And that's another testament. Like, kids know and they see it. They can see the goodness of things going on outside of their home. And I think it's important that you kind of feed that, whether you're conscious of it or not.
I agree.
And like, as uncles, as you are, that they need a male figure in their life. And that's important.
It's important. No, I agree, Jason. So, I got to flip the switch too about this, because I'm highly aware as a priest, back in 2018 here in the U.S., we had he was a whole cardinal. His name was Cardinal McKenzie. He was Archbishop of D.C. I didn't know him. Don't know much about him except for what I've read or what I've heard. But he was obviously accused of some terrible things towards minors and I think seminarians. But that's not what I'm talking about here, and I don't want to trigger anybody. But one of the things that upset me the most about Cardinal McKenzie, or now I think is Theodore McKenzie, because the Pope took away his, being a cardinal, whatever. But one of the things that righteously angered me the most about his situation, he was known as Uncle Ted. Mm. And that's a title that for me hits me personally. Okay. Because I am an uncle to 3 nephews and a niece. Right. And I take that role, I take it as a sacred duty. I take it as a God-given right to be a fatherly figure and an uncle figure to my niece and nephews. Mm-hmm. And to have that seen in any different light besides what it should be, it really, really hit me back in 2018. And I was like, man, how would you dare have, despite all the other titles, you're talking about an archbishop, all that, I don't care. No, you don't do that. Right. And so for me, that really hit me, because it is within the family structure, whether it be in the family nucleus or outside of that, where young people want to be would naturally go to be mentored, and to distort that by any means is just pure evil. So you're right. It's in those family and those friend circles. I mean, again, my personal testimony was being on the lake with one of my best friends and my nephew, and just that interchange of like generations and us passing down wisdom to him. And, you know, we're talking about the top 5 rappers, which he had a whole different group than what we had, right?
Oh, okay.
You know
That's
what I'm
cool.
saying? So like, he's giving us, you know, we're giving him wisdom. He's giving us knowledge. He's learning. We're learning. And it's just a beautiful thing to be in that circle of mentorship. I also feel like there have been times where I've failed. You know, like one of my nephews was telling me about, you know, I'm not trying to throw his business out there either, about, you know, school last year. And I'm like, dang, I didn't even reach out to him, you know, last semester to see how he was doing. You know, now he's back. I'm a little bit more engaged. But, you know, like, it's just things like that. Like, yes, it's in the family and friend circle that we find mentorship.
Yeah, I man, it's funny you say that about the fishing, because a buddy of mine, my man Dr. Darius,
Dr. Darius, that sounds like a pretty cool name. Dr. Darius. I'm Dr. Darius.
He kind of got me back into fishing, and I say that because I was fishing. I used to fish with my grandfather, and my dad when I was really young.
That's what's up.
And yeah, it's all right. I think when he triggered that, you know, I think somebody actually pulled his coattail and took him fishing.
Okay.
And that's usually how those things actually happen.
Yeah.
And what was funny about that was that somebody introduced it to Darius. Darius brought it to us.
Yeah.
We started fishing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I started going fishing. Like I think it was an odd time, like right before that recession in like 2008 or whatever.
Okay.
And we were laid off, and it was times where I just had time to go out and do a whole lot of fishing.
Yeah.
And I was fishing like every week. And lo and behold, I started fishing again. My dad started fishing again.
Oh, wow.
A heck of a lot more.
Yeah.
Nah, this dude, he fishes way more than I ever did.
Right.
Again. But and that's really, he got back in the groove of that. So that's kind of like how things.
So you kind of pulled him in.
Yeah.
In a way, like early on he pulled you in, and then later on you pulled him in.
Yeah, and that's
beautiful.
That's how the cycle of men work. But the guys that I'm talking about, I'm gonna shout them out: Darius, Rashad, and Brandon. We would call after 4 when we were when we came up from out of communication and media arts high school.
Okay.
And I just remember like having deep conversations about relationship, especially with my boy Brandon. When we were young, like 19, having just talking about relationships and engaging in different ways. I mean, and I could talk about them all individually, but we have different relationships.
Yeah.
But as a group, it's even hard to get together now, and that's kind of frustrating. But you know,
it is as we get older. It's so hard.
But they like brothers.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like when we come together, we come together.
Right.
We always engage in whether it be birthdays. We try to get together when kids have their birthdays, because a lot of us had kids at the same time. But I think there's a sense of accountability
which is needed,
that we have for some odd reason.
Yeah.
And some ways may be competitive unnecessarily, which may or may not be good.
But that's a natural instinct though of men, is just being competitive.
But they had
like
that accountability.
Hold on, if Gerald is watching this, I just didn't know how to hook and reel. I mean, I really would have had 3 fish. So just that's how I go, because we was competitive on fishing. It was like, because I was always the person that was like, we got to teach each other before we get competitive. Right.
But the one guy who knows the most, he's always like, well, you're going to learn on your own. You know, that's kind of how that always goes. But again, regardless of how it goes, it's iron sharpens iron.
That's
you know what I mean?
That's
regardless of how it is, whether it's competitive, whether it's one man teaching another, whether it's old and young, kids and adults, like when male figures get together, you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
And God's grace is gonna actually make all of this happen, because this is life experience that you gaining, whether it be family or friends.
Exactly. I agree. So okay, I think a next point would be, all right, if you don't find mentor or role model within your family and friend structure, you can broaden it to your church. Catholics, we say the parish, but parish church is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have in Detroit the family of parishes, so we have multiple churches within one family. Generally, you should be able to find someone that could be a good mentor to you. And I get it too. Like not everybody wants to see the priest, right, as the mentor, because there are things about my life that are not going to connect with, this other person, right? Yeah. And so it is good to have other male role models within your parish or church structure that you can go to. I mean, you could talk about a youth minister, right? That's a general kind of go-to for a young man to have a role model. I would also think, like we have in our structure, we have a pastoral associate who is a lay person, married, younger dude, Teron Vonner.
Mm-hmm.
And
shout out to Ron.
Shout out to Teron. And he does a lot with mentoring our young people in general, both girls and boys. But I think, those people, we as the pastors and priests and deacons, we have to be even more promoting, hey, these are the people to go to if you want or need to be mentored. This youth minister, this pastor associate, this person within the church. And the more we promote them, actually they feel good because they feel like, okay, I'm actually doing something good here. Mm-hmm. But it also becomes more clear, these are the people you can go to. And we do the same thing in the seminary. Like at the seminary, you get a list of priests that could be your spiritual director. Now you get to choose who's going to be the spiritual director, but the list is the list, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to have that list out there in your churches, because it's a lot of things, a lot of conversations that I can't really explain to a younger crowd that I think a lay person, a lay man would be more.
I get what you're saying.
I get it'd be exactly better for him to explain and talk about. Yeah.
I'm gonna start this one.
Okay.
And then restart it.
All right. Restart it where?
Because at like 22 minutes, that's when we cut off last time.
Yeah.
So I guess that cycle we going. Okay. So in hearing what you're saying, I think that when I hear you say the word promote, the first thing that comes to mind is like an announcement after mass or whatever.
Yeah.
Or sharing that there are people that you can talk to. Mm-hmm. And I think that, for me, it may be a little bit different because the first thing I think about is like how someone came to me and invited me to something. And I think some of that is that, and I would go back to the responsibility of being that male figure.
Yeah.
If we have a certain amount of male figures, then we've got guys who can go touch one person and say, hey, how are you doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes that's got to break the ice to figure out where guys are.
I agree.
And I mean, you've got X amount of people in each church, parish. We can find out where some of these guys are.
For sure.
It can start with me and you.
Yeah.
We go touch a couple of guys and say, hey, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we even got to start a group. It just means that it can be breakfast. It could be having coffee and donuts after mass.
Yeah.
Or after your church service. I think that needs to trickle down a heck of a lot easier some people don't even know each other's names.
Yeah. No, that's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like I think
that's true.
Those steps need to be taken. And then we start making those announcements or putting things in the bulletin or saying who to talk to, because now you've got a bigger platform to say we're generating something as a community.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, no, precisely. And that leads us to like forming men's groups and those ones that are already existing.
Yeah.
I'm giving the mass and a talk to the men's group at Our Lady of Good Counsel in Plymouth.
Are they dope?
They've been around for about 15 years now.
Wow.
From what I understand, they're about 600 plus guys on their mailing list. There are about 150 that show up to their, I think it's weekly meetings that
they have. Is it
like
Wednesday or Thursday mornings or something?
It's most of the times it's in the morning. Every so often they'll have an evening event. Okay. I'm actually doing the evening event in August. Okay. But I had a meeting with these guys. They're kind of committee on when they get speakers or whatever, and I was just so edified by what they were what they were able to put together, and they kind of gave me a little history of it. So if a group isn't already there in your church, maybe it's time to form a men's group so that you can be a mentor to other young men. So I want to shout out Our Lady of Good Counsel's men's group, and I know several guys that don't even live in Plymouth that actually goes to this men's group. That's how important a lot of men see this ministry.
I know a couple guys that go.
Yeah, it's so
I think that's powerful, man.
I do too.
I've heard testimonies about it. I've heard guys that say, it's kind of like, it's almost like a restaurant that's always there, that's always serving good food. That's how people talk about it.
Wow.
And that's how powerful I've heard a lot of that is. And I think that, like you said, if you got 150 guys that go on a regular basis, that's wow.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
that's like,
so you would be able to find some good guys to mentor other young guys.
Yeah. And I'm gonna just say this, man.
Yeah.
Outside of the sacraments,
mm-hmm.
I think that could be one of the most pivotal things for a man in his walk of life and walk of faith,
mm-hmm.
having something like that.
Yeah.
Because you need somebody to talk to on a regular basis.
For sure.
Some guys not married,
Yep.
so they don't have anybody to call.
Yep.
And I know that from my experience with my men's group, I couldn't wait until the next day to get to this conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't think some guys know how important these conversations actually are, because you need a release and you actually need some information to absorb to be able to get through your week, your month, or whatever it is that you may be going through.
Agreed. I agree. There are other groups out there too, in the Black Catholic community. We have the Knights of Peter Claver.
Yeah, I'm part of that.
Okay, you're one of the Knights. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't been invited. I'm just gonna say that, but shout out to the Knights of Peter Claver, and everybody knows about the Knights of Columbus.
Yep.
They actually invited me, years ago. So I did become a Knight of Columbus, and to see them in the churches and the things that they do, even the Knights of Peter Claver, and the things they do within the communities, I think is very important. And that is a way to engage as a man, to engage in ministry, but also to be mentored and then to mentor others. So those groups, I try. A friend of mine, Dr. Ken Kernan, we had back in 2020, so it's been 4 years now, we established a men's wines group. So we will have some wine.
That's cool.
What we do is we structure it. We would meet every 6 weeks, and we will, start with Vespers. So we start with examination of conscience, and then we pray Vespers.
Oh, that's dope.
And then for us, this moment of right after Vespers, like in the monasteries, we offer each other the sign of peace. But it's deeper than just, hey, peace be with you, peace be with you. It's like we start with examining our conscience, just placing ourselves in silence, right? And then we just bring that all out to God, and then we begin with Vespers. So by the time we're done with Vespers, we've filled ourselves so much with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That sign of peace means something real.
Yeah.
And a bunch of those, all of us are dealing with all the stuff we got to do in life. And then we usually will have a talk on a letter or article or a gospel passage, and we all we talk about our challenges.
That's good.
What was it? The graces and the challenges in life. 2 of those, 2 graces, 2 challenges. And that's been something organic that we've started.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also another one of those things hey, if these groups don't even exist, you can start, 2 or 3 guys can start to get together. And it could be as organic as just getting together. But I think what's essential, though, is that you become vulnerable to these guys, because that's how you get out of your shell.
Yeah.
You can't just be everything is perfect and hey, everything, no.
Yeah.
No, you have
gotta break yourself down.
You have to. You got
to take the pieces apart, and that's and that goes both ways.
Yes, it does.
Because I think that most guys have everybody's got walls, But most guys got some stuff deep in the basement in the cupboards that need to come out. And I think that when us as men, when we accept that, it's like it don't have to come out day one. For some guys, it may.
No,
and
very true.
Unfortunately, you may walk in on a day in the topic where they talking about pornography and masturbation.
Yeah. Yep.
Another day they may be talking about what's going on at home with children.
Right.
But I mean, the Lord is going to work in all of this, and I think that's the beauty of it all is that like you said, when you pray with these guys, you're emptying yourself of all of the things that are happening in the world, and you're filling yourself with wisdom and God's grace in the midst of these prayers. And it's like, that's when those walls start to, some of them break apart. It may take time. They crumble and it can get emotional. And I think it's all good. I've been in men's groups where they ready to throw hands, and again, we're men.
Hey, put on those boxing gloves.
Yeah.
Put a mouth guard on.
Hey, if you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
But I think the most important part is what you just said about that vulnerability. I'm telling you that's when
it's needed. It's needed.
That's when you really start getting those really deep roots.
Yeah.
Because now you're tearing apart all of that sin and pushing away all of the things that the enemy has an influence on.
Everything.
All of that stuff,
I agree. Yeah, we've had two. I want to share two instances where our men's group has really touched me without even going into detail, because it's all confidential, right? You don't want to divulge.
That's
anything.
really important.
It's so important. But I remember one guy showed up once, and he. This was his first time there, and you could see during the Vespers time he was like shedding tears.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned it. He was like, I never knew a group like this existed.
Right.
He was like, this is reminding me of my childhood, and it was just so emotional. We've had instances, where a guy has revealed things about his life, and, you just sit back, you're like, dang, that's a lot of courage. But once you do reveal in a real way, other people start to want to reveal. And then that's where like that real brotherhood comes in. So like at the beginning of our episode, I really harked on this insecurity but part of it is like, it's kind of like we have to be compassionate too towards these men that have never been formed in the school of the Gospels to understand what it means to be even a man, right?
Yeah.
So you almost can't. It's like Jesus on the cross, like, God forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I say that when these things break apart, we don't. Some of us, you may not even know what's going on behind all of those things.
Right.
And that's what breaks all of those things down. I can't. It's hard to even explain because that's really how deep it really is.
Yep.
And that takes time, man.
It does.
It really does take time. I give you an example.
Yeah.
When I was going through my divorce, and I might have said this story before, that I would call guys, relay what was going on, dang near in tears, and they would open up.
Yeah.
About what's going on in their relationships.
Yeah, because you had opened up to them.
Yeah. So I'm like, and to me, I was like, wait a minute, who am I? I'm crying out to you, and now I'm turning around ministering to you what you got going on at your crib. I'm
beautiful.
I'm about to lose my bride,
right?
But you got stuff going on too,
right? So
the roles were reversed,
right?
And I didn't know how powerful that was.
That is, this is beautiful. I don't do spiritual direction a lot, but I make exceptions for certain types, right? And so we had one. I'm not going to say who because what types and all that, but we had a type that met that standard, because I believe as a parish priest, like, I need to be pastoring the whole parish. Like, I can't be like, okay, spiritual director, so I just generally say no to spiritual direction, except for two types. And so we had one of those types come in. This person sat down with me, and I said, first of all, whatever you have in your head about spiritual direction, just throw it out. if you're trying to be, if you're trying to do this here with me, throw all those concepts out.
Right.
I said, the way I do it is spiritual paternity, spiritual fatherhood, and it goes back to the ancient Egyptian monks.
Okay.
And it's a revelation, so you have to be transparent to me. Now, it's to be a vessel of God, but I will be as transparent to you about me.
Right.
So there's this real kind of what we call the admirable exchange, if you want to say, of the spiritual father being vulnerable to the spiritual son being vulnerable to the spiritual father. But in that context is where the Lord's healing starts to take place.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability, and that humility and vulnerability starts to take apart pride, all those like attachment, worldly things that we have, and it really breaks it down.
Yeah.
That's why I'm very serious about, like, there's only two types I will give spiritual direction to, because I don't know how to do, like, just spiritual direction, like, oh, you tell me, and now I'm going to give you counsel, and have a nice day, see you next month. No, it's like, you're going to be, and I think for some people, that's really hard, because some people don't know how to, like, reveal their most interior life. Whereas and that was hard for me for a long time. I got used to it. In the monastery, we did chapter of faults, where we got together and we talked about, 2 or 3 faults that we committed against the community. Okay. And the more and more you did that, the more vulnerability, but also the more humility. It was just like, yeah, it is what it is, right? Like,
yeah, it is.
So, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying there. Maybe that's.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that like there's men's groups, there's spiritual direction. When some of these things begin to work together, your transparency begins to, like, it strengthens.
Yeah.
You got to strengthen transparency, because if you can't be vulnerable, then you just got walls up and doors closed, no windows are open. You're not gonna allow anything in.
Yeah.
And you're holding so much in, and that goes for men and women.
Yeah, it does.
So, it's important for guys to know that, because we'll busy ourselves with work.
Right.
We'll busy ourselves even with family. We'll busy ourselves with sports, gambling, substances, pornography. We'll do all of that stuff. Right. While it's like we're talking about hours-long men's groups, and it's just like, yeah, that's going to break you down, and be prepared for that.
Right.
Because it's going to work. Just like spiritual direction, it's like you got to be transparent. That's the only way it's going to work.
That's the only way.
It's only going to go as deep as the screw may go. It's like it's only going to work as far as you go.
Right.
And some people, that's important.
And some people don't know how to do it. And you can guide them, help them. Some people don't want to do it. Right. So those that don't want to do it, will just get out.
Yeah. And it's a fight to do this.
It is.
It's a fight. Like sometimes that the enemy doesn't want you to be engaged in this.
Yeah.
He doesn't want you to be engaged with groups and like-minded men who really have a desire to draw close to the Lord, who want to be transparent and be better fathers, uncles, better priests, better men in general. So, like, it's gonna be a fight, and we gotta pray that men actually engage in some form. We've given some good bullet points here, and some ideas of how to say, hey, maybe I need to start a men's group. And you know what? One thing I didn't put on there that was relevant to being that guy, is just picking up the phone and calling somebody. Yeah. Just pick up the phone and call one of your boys. Yeah. Like, a lot of times I be wondering, like, ain't nobody gonna call me? Yeah. And I'm like, I got to make the phone call. Yeah. No, because like I said earlier, if I don't begin to open up to somebody else, they're not gonna open up to me.
I agree. No, I agree. I think one of the things, and maybe we ended here, is what you said. Like St. Paul says, "Bona certamini." Fight the good fight. Every day.
Every day.
Every day. It never ends. Fight the good fight. The more we fight it, the better we are to combat and pick ourselves back up. So, we got another episode of this, right?
Yeah, we do. I think we got a few more bullet points. We may have 2 more episodes the way this is going, bro.
Yeah, seriously.
This is good. I think this is going to get deep, man.
Yeah, I think we might even. No, it's true. All right. We're going to stop here. Otherwise, we're going to get into the third one.
Yeah. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and we got more stuff coming.
We're on YouTube too now,
Yeah,
right?
YouTube, man. So
yeah.
get the video rolling.
I would love to hear from everybody. Like, are you enjoying the content? You know, what are some aspects that you feel that you can always comment, right?
Ask some questions,
comments, right?
Ask some questions. We can make content and create episodes based on what we hear.
Yeah,
you know,
happy to do it. You know, a couple of people have already kind of talked to us. One of the things that I was surprised at, they said they enjoy our kind of realness.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm a person I kind of want the whole production and, you know, multi-million-dollar platform.
Right.
And people are just like, no, we just like, you guys are real. It's like,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I guess we just keep it real.
All right. Yeah.
This is it.
All right. Tune in to another episode of the Father podcast.
Peace. God bless.
God bless.
Peace. I thought us two could sit down and actually, put a podcast together and see what happens and see who we inspire.
2 men, being black men, being from the city of Detroit, and being Catholic in itself. You put those together, that's going to be rare.
We want to just be 2 brothers talking and see what happens.
You're listening to the Father and Father podcast with Father John, McKenzie, and Jason A. Smith. A Subtle Visions production.